2004 F-150 new body style that has a front coil spring that's broken on it. You can see it down here, right there. It's a pretty bad split. It's a full break, and that's pretty common on these. And this truck has over 140,000 miles on it, and of course over 10 years old already. So we're going to change out the complete strut assembly here. They offer pre-made complete struts in the aftermarket, and we're going to be swapping it out today. I'm going to show you how, so you can put your favorite strut in there. Now, of course, the first thing you got to do is jack the vehicle up and get the wheel out of the way so we have working room. And then we're going to come over here, we're going to start pre-soaking all the bolts and nuts we're going to be taking off. This one right here needs to be soaked for the tie rod end, so you can pop that and get it out of the way. And then up top here, we're going to pull off all three of the nuts, obviously, to separate it from the strut tower here. So we're going to wire brush these and spray with some rust penetrant. And then, of course, don't forget your big bolt down here that bolts to the lower control arm, the back side. Over here, the threads, they like to get corroded from all debris. So we're going to wire brush that one, let it soak a little bit. Alright, so the easiest one to start taking off is the outer tie rod end nut on here. These ones usually aren't too bad, so we'll let everything else soak. We'll start working this off of there. Now what I use for rust penetrant on all my vehicles that come in is the Mopar rust penetrant from your Chrysler dealer. This stuff we've used, this stuff and other stuff out there that have come in. These salesmen come in with their rust penetrants that are just the greatest in the world, and nothing to date has compared to this stuff. So if you're having a tough bolt to get off, you want some good rust penetrant, try this stuff and see for yourself. Start soaking everything. And we'll wire brush it. Get our threads as clean as possible from mud and rust and all that. That way there's no cross threading coming back off. Any of these suspension bolts and nuts you should really be changing out to new. But if you're not changing out to new, you need to put a thread locker on in the end. It is an acceptable substitute for replacing the bolts and nuts according to Ford. And the reason being, all these nuts that Ford uses on their suspension parts have a nylon insert in them for locking, and once they've been tightened down and heated up inside of there and it's done its job, it's done for it. So it doesn't have that locking mechanism no more, and you need to provide another way to lock it in. And that's where the medium strength loctite comes in. So let's zip this right off of here. And if you don't have air tools and this starts spinning, there is a hex holding feature right here if you need to. Usually they're in there pretty good. And then we're going to clean out this area right here of any rust and stuff. And then we're going to put our glasses on and we're going to wrap the side of this here, kind of vibrate it loose, and then we'll finally tap it right here. And it may fall out like that, or you may wrap it a couple times, it loosens, and then you just have to tap it through like that. Either way, these aren't a problem. And the next thing we'll do is get this huge bolt down here off of there. This side, the head is 1 16", and the nut on the other side is 29 millimeters. And these usually aren't too bad. They're torqued over 300 foot-pounds, but corrosion is usually not an issue. Just hold it on this side and zip it off. After that, it should tap right through. And the size of that bolt, huh? Went extra beefy in the new F-150s for sure. Flop this back down and out of the way, and then we'll go up top there and we'll start getting those nuts off the top of the strut, and that's gonna be the biggest pain out of this whole job. Now up here on the top, I'll show you how it looks. You can see them there, get a nice clear view this way. These are 15 millimeter nuts. I recommend to change them out. They usually get pretty rusty. but it's not totally necessary. The new ready-made struts I have do come with new nuts on them, but they're not locking nuts. So it's something to think about if you want to get new ones from Ford. Get them now before you start tearing this apart. Now these two are pretty easy to get to. I use gear wrenches for most of this. The one that's way back in here, I don't think you even see it, but it's right here in the center. Right back here, not this one, back here. That one actually is easiest to get at from the engine compartment. You put a long extension down to it. You can even use air tools to get it out. But either way, get these three out. These three nuts off of here, and then we'll start finagling this whole strut assembly out of here. Up here in the engine compartment, you can see that back center one is a clear shot with an extension, and even power tools can get in there and zip that one out. Otherwise, through the wheel well, you're gonna be fighting it the whole way out. It's a real pain. I couldn't even get a shot of it earlier with the camera. That's how buried it is from the wheel well, so this is a lot easier. Now probably the hardest part of getting this shock out of here, this coilover shock, is getting it past the boot on the CV shaft right here. What you have to realize is you may want to turn this whole knuckle away. We'll get it away from there so I can get in there. No, you want to turn it back this way, either straight or over a little bit, and that'll give you a little bit more clearance getting past here. Otherwise it'll slide past without, you know, fighting it otherwise. It's just getting it past the boot without damage. So yours should be pretty loose like this. It's loose. And you're gonna want to get some kind of pry tool in to get it past here. It's gonna get a little bit tight. And once we're out of the ears on the lower control arm, all we gotta do is shuffle it past the CV boot. And you just need to work it past there. You just need to be patient about it and just keep working it past. A little bit here and there. See, I got it forward and now I'm pulling it over to the side, and of course we're gonna clear it now. There we go. Just don't tear it past there is all I'm saying, because you'll tear the boot up. And after that it should come right out. Now comparing it to the new strut, you want to make sure that the flat of the pass-through here is flat like that, and you follow it up, and you have your two ears and the one in the center the same way you took your old one out. So when you're going back in, everything should pop right through. You put a nut on and it can hold it while we're fighting it in down here. Now going back together, we're going to want to clean the area where the shock mounts up to in here, these ears and all this debris in here, and then of course especially up in here, all these big chunks of rust and debris. You want to get them out of there so it sits against it as flush as possible, and there's no noise issues afterwards. And now's a good time to get these nuts and bolts all cleaned up, the threads on them cleaned up, and to get the old rust penetrant off of there with some brake clean. Wipe them off real quick and then blow it all out of there. And then we'll apply the Loctite to all the bolt threads and nut threads now and get them all set up so you can start just throwing them back on there. Now going back together, just make sure you get your studs lined up to the holes in the strut tower, and we should be able to slide it up in there, and you only need one nut that holds onto one of these studs right now, and then we'll get that started on there, and that'll hold it in place for us. Get our nut started. And that'll hold it for us. And I'll show you a little trick I use for this to get it back in there, where this whole strut right here does not turn. There's no strut bearing up top there. It's not meant to turn, so it's kind of stiff. So what we can do is stick a pry bar in here. We can kind of twist it. It's like this right now. We're going to twist it like this a little bit, and we kind of sneak it past the boot a little easier. And then the same thing, once you get it in there, you want to come back this way and straighten it out, and then it'll slide right in like that. Get our big honker bolt in here. Just kind of get lined up. We're gonna have to pry it down a little bit. And once it's in there, you can tap it through the rest of the way. Get our nut on there. Make sure you have plenty of Loctite on this one especially. And we're just gonna snug it down, and we're gonna do the final tightening later once the weight of the vehicle is on the strut here, because this bushing will tear up because it flexes if we're not at the curb height position when it's at the rest position. Otherwise, it's always be twisted. Even at curb height, and you could tear up that bushing real quick. Get our tie rod end back on here. And the torque spec on this is 111 foot-pounds. I just go to 115 on there. At this point, we can tighten the upper shock mounting bolts. They're 35 foot-pounds. Now for final tightening of that lower big boy bolt there, we're going to want the weight of the vehicle on the strut assembly itself. And you can either use a jack or a jack stand like this and support it from the lower control arm. That way it compresses it to ride height, and we can do the final tightening on there. It's 350 foot-pounds for that torque spec. Okay, so once you put that strut back in there, you got it bolted in up top and down below. We're all torqued down just right. We're gonna put the wheel back on and tighten the lug nuts to 150 foot-pounds on there. Now, once you get it all installed, both sides, you should always change struts in pairs, especially springs, because those are the load-bearing part of the actual vehicle that hold the weight of the vehicle up. You always want to change them in pairs. After all that's put back together, go for a test drive and see and make sure there's no abnormal noises. There should be no noises from these struts once they're installed properly like this. They're all brand new, and there's no reason for any weird components on them to be worn out. You just got to watch what company you use for these pre-made struts. You can buy the cheap ones, I'm sure, for $100, $150 completely made struts, but they're going to cause problems down the road. I've had a lot of them where they put on cheap struts, and there's 5,000 miles down the road, maybe not even 5,000, and to come back and the center strut rod is gone through the upper mount on there already. So that it's already failed. Now it's got warranted and all that stuff, and then the truck's down again and all that stuff. So it's never good to just go with the cheap stuff. You might as well go to the mid-grade or higher, and then you won't have no problems for the regular, life of a strut on there. So besides that, it's a very easy job. These few tips and tricks that are in this video makes it go a lot easier. I've honed them in over the years, what actually works and doesn't work, especially getting the strut past the boot on there and the CV boot without damage. That's the big thing. You don't want to be taking that out next. So hopefully this helps.